PMDG 747-400 is a really complex aircraft to fly. It is amongst one of the best aircraft for FSX, but it does demand a lot of effort to learn how to fly it correctly. In this series of short videos I'm going to look at how to fly it. I cannot guarantee that everything I state is absolutely correct, but hopefully it will give us all enough information to fly the aircraft, more importantly land the aircraft, and enjoy the beautiful machine that it actually is. So, the PMDG 747-400 series, the Queen of the Skies. In this first video on the PMDG Boeing 747-400 series for FSX, I'm going to look at how we initially start the aircraft up from cold and dark. Let me say right at the beginning that this aircraft is very new to me. Although I've had it on my system for a year or more, I haven't actually gone into great depths of finding out how to fly it. Some of the features that I mention may not be given in the absolutely correct order because, as I've just said, I am learning about this aircraft myself. However, hopefully it will give us enough information to get the aircraft started and also in the air and able to fly along with the autopilot and FMC systems built into this wonderful aircraft. The PMDG Boeing 747 comes with its own load manager, and it is important that you load the aircraft both with passengers and fuel through this load manager. So at this particular time we have the aircraft loaded with fuel, but the aircraft displays are all black. There is no power supply to the aircraft, and so we are going to have to now power up the aircraft and start the engines. Much of the starting procedure will be operated from this overhead panel, and we will look at that now in more detail as we use all of the features of this to get this beautiful aircraft started. Now, it is possible to connect the aircraft to a ground power supply, in which case we can have this cockpit area powered up by an external power supply. But for the purpose of this particular video, I'm going to assume that no ground supply is available, and we are therefore going to have to use the auxiliary power unit that the aircraft is equipped with to produce power for us to make the engine start. You may just hear a little turboprop running in the distance. This is an aircraft that is about to take off on the runway in front of us. We may see that aircraft passing our aircraft shortly. There is this 3D panel, and it is possible to obtain a 2D panel. If I select F10, which is the button that I've set on my keyboard for this feature, I can select 2D. So I can go F9 3D, F10 2D. When I'm in the 2D version, if I click on this center console here, I can get an extra display, visible or not visible as I wish. There's the aircraft taking off in front of us. And if I have this panel visible, I can select from various features up here. So I can select the overhead and the flight officer, and I can select the throttle pedestal and various other things. So if I select overhead, I can switch between the overhead and the 2D view. This will be a very useful view for the initial powering up procedures. Okay, let's start the power up procedure and get some electrical power to the system. Switch to 2D view and select overhead. Now, the startup procedure can appear to be quite long-winded and daunting to start with, but like everything, once you've done it a few times, things will fall into place. Let's just take a brief look at the overhead panel in a little more detail before we do anything. The top of the section here is all connected with fire suppression. The center left is engine start. The center right is fuel jettison. The lower part is fuel control, and the very bottom of the section is lighting. Bottom left is associated with hydraulics. The center left is all to do with electronics. The top right is passenger comfort, and the bottom right is pneumatics and air control. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to turn the main battery on. This will provide power to the aircraft for approximately 30 minutes. So left click, and the battery switch is now on. It's important to note that on the 747, if any switch has a horizontal or vertical line showing, or two vertical lines or two horizontal lines showing, it is on. To the left of the main battery switch is a rotating switch, and this can be used with right click or left switch to off or auto or battery. We need to set this to auto. Above the battery switch is a utility left and right. This allows power to go to the interior of the aircraft, doors, cabins and so on. We need to put that to on. We're now going to move down to the lighting panel, and at any point when the aircraft is powered, we should have the navigation lights on. This will warn ground crew that the aircraft is powered up. We now need to arm the emergency lights. The switch is difficult on the aircraft in this particular view. It's at the top of the panel and it can be hidden by this other toolbar. If you right click it, it will open the safety cover, and then you can click on the inside and set it to armed. In order for the autopilot system to work correctly and the guidance system to work on the FMC, we need now to align the navigation system. There are 3 buttons here because there are 3 gyros that talk to each other to ensure that the aircraft is very accurately navigated. In order to switch these on, we need to set them to align. But we need to switch them off first, and then to nav, and then to align. So it's now off, switch to nav and back to align. Switch the second one off, back to nav and back to align. The third one to off, back to nav and back to align. Now the alignment system takes 10 minutes to work through all of the check procedures. This is by default. You can, when you are used to the system, go into the menu within the aircraft settings and you can reduce the time that this takes. But for realism, we will leave it as it should be, a 10-minute startup procedure. This is where the gyros now align themselves with all the navigation inputs that are necessary for it to locate its position and work out where we are in the world. At this point, whilst the gyros are aligning, you will see in the main display here, it has left, centre and right, and it is saying it's 7+ minutes to align. Each of those is going to take 7+ minutes to align. When they eventually show 0, then the alignment system has been successfully completed. Now, whilst this is being achieved, we need to get some information from the FMC. On the panel switcher in the 2D view, click FMC. We can now see the FMC display. We now need to click the FMC button, which is the left number 1 key here. This gives us an ident page, and we now need to click the bottom right key here where it says POS init. We need to click that. Now press and hold the clear button to make sure that any information in the bottom of the scratch pad has been completely removed. Click right hand key 4 to enter the coordinates in the bottom of the scratch pad, and then right hand key 5 to enter those coordinates into the FMC. We can now close the FMC and switch back to 3D view. You will see now that the time to alignment is changing. It has 6 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. You just have to be patient and allow this alignment to take place. This is very important for the accuracy of flying this aircraft. Okay, now we're going back to the overhead view. We're now going to turn the main fuel crossfeed on. This will allow the fuel that is being loaded into the aircraft to flow freely and evenly between all of the tanks on the aircraft. There are 2 crossfeed fuels pumps switches, one on the left and one on the right. These are now showing horizontal light. They are now both turned on. All other fuel pumps at the moment should be in the off position. We now need to switch on window heat. It is good practice to have heat to the windscreen at all times. It is also necessary to switch the yaw dampers on. This is an automatic system that will maintain the aircraft in smooth changes of direction. We now need to look at the APU, the Auxiliary Power Unit. This is a little jet engine turbine located in the rear base of the tail of the aircraft, and this will provide us with electrical power. So switch to start. It will immediately return to on, and you then have to be patient whilst the engine starts, and you will eventually have on the AP generators here an indicator which is saying available. Be patient, it takes a minute or two. These switches have now illuminated APU generator 1 and APU generator 2 showing available. Left click to switch on and on. You can now hear the generator starting. We have 2 generators running. Now check that the passenger temperature is set to auto and the flight deck is set to auto. As we now have a generator running, we can start to cool the cabins down and use the air conditioning system. We also need to ensure the trim air is on. Trim air is warm air that is drawn from the engines and mixed with the air conditioning to maintain a comfortable temperature throughout the aircraft. Then turn on the upper and lower recirculating air supply. This maintains a comfortable airflow throughout the cabins. If you have valuable cargo, make sure that the aft cargo is also switched on. Without that heat into the aft cargo section, it will get very cold. One last switch on the air system is this gasper switch. Make sure that is turned on. That is the air that you can personally direct on the vents above your seat. There are now air packs, Air Pack 1, Air Pack 2, Air Pack 3. Just ensure that these are in the normal position. Normal, normal, normal. Between the air packs are 2 isolation switches. Just ensure that they are on. 2 white lines on each of them. That ensures even distribution of the air between all of these systems. Now really we should set a lot more information into the FMC for an actual flight. I'm going to avoid doing that at this point, and I'm going to jump just to the engine start procedure, and in the next section of the video I will come back to how we program the FMC. So we now need to look at the throttle quadrant. So I click on throttle and I ensure that the fuel switches to the 4 engines are on. Okay, we now have electrical power, we have air and hydraulic power. We now need to select APU engine bleed so that we can draw air from the APU to start the engines. In addition to the APU engine bleed, we now need to select the bleed for engine 1, 2, 3 and 4. We can now go to the engine start controls and start engine 1 by pulling. You will get a red indicator showing that it is in operation. Engine 1 just started. We'll now go back in and start engine 2. Pull engine 2. Engine 2 now starting. Engine 2 started. Pull engine 3 and 4. Engine 3 and 4 now rotating and commencing the starting procedure. Engine 3 now started. Engine 4 now started. Go back inside, still the 2D panel at the moment. We can now see the engine information data here showing that the engines are now running at idle. And as a test, if I throttle up, we will see those indicators move. So we have power. All 4 engines starting and operational. And so at this point I should be able to release the brakes, apply power and begin my taxi. And I have successfully started my 747-400 series and can be ready for takeoff. So in the next video I will start the video with the engines prepared and running, and we shall look at setting the FMC for flight and undertaking our first flight in the 747-400.